This conference will now be recorded.
So, in yesterday's demo session, uh, we have discussed about a few points like what is performance testing, LoadRunner architecture, and we have recorded a simple flow and we have replayed the script. We have, at a very high level, we have analyzed how the code is getting generated. We have gone through the course content, okay, and in today's session, we are going to discuss about the different types of performance testing. I do have slides for all of these different types of performance testing, but I I prefer to explain these types of performance testing today in Notepad. Later on, I can share the PPTs. Okay. Now, anyways, if you have this Notepad file, that should be more than enough. Okay, so why note I have chosen Notepad is, it will be easy to write some running notes for today so that you can understand in a better way. Okay, so now let me uh, okay, so yesterday we have discussed about performance testing definition, right? I told you it's all about checking the performance of an application by applying load, right? I told you what is load also. Like load is in terms of number of users. Okay, generally, okay, performance testing is measured in terms of, speed, stability, and scalability. So when we discuss about different types of performance testing, I'll tell you what is this speed, stability, and scalability. Okay. Anyways, let's discuss one point on these terms. What do you mean by speed? Okay, speed means how fast the application is responding. Okay, how much time it is taking for the user to navigate from one page to another page. Okay, so like it's all checking the speed of the application when you apply some load. Then what do you mean by stability? Stability means how the application is performing in, when you when you execute for a longer duration. How stable is your application? Let's say you are running a test for 5 hours or 8 hours or something like that for a longer duration. How stable is your application? And then scalability. Scalability means like how scalable is your application, especially if the requirement to test the application with more number of users. Okay, so we'll discuss these three terms, okay, again with respect to the types of performance testing. Now here, um, I'll just mention the types of performance testing. First is, the first major type of test that we do is load testing. Okay, second, stress testing. Third, endurance or soak or duration testing. I mean, we call with all these names. Okay, fourth is scalability testing. Fifth, um, volume testing. Sixth, failover testing. Seven, let's say spike testing. Okay, and then there is something called smoke test also, which we will discuss, okay, later. But for now, let's begin and understand these different types of performance testing. Like yesterday, I told you it's all about checking the performance of an application by applying some load. That's a very high level definition of performance testing. But in real time, we have to perform various types of performance testing. Okay, like these load testing, stress testing, endurance testing, depending on the client requirement. Not every project will run or execute all these types of performance tests. It all depends on what is the client requirement. Okay, if client is not suggesting anything, then probably you can suggest these three. I'll tell you. Okay, so first let's begin with load testing. As I said, load testing is all about taking the speed of the application, taking the speed of the application by applying expected load. Okay, but so checking the speed of the application by applying expected load. So load, as I said, number of users. Let's say, for example, 500 users. Let's say you're testing some bank application. Let's say 500 users is a load given by client. Okay, so who is giving this 500 number to you? So either client will give you this number, okay, saying that, hey, you have to do a load test for this application with 500 users. Okay, so um, like, okay, client will give you 500 users, or you can get it from uh, business analyst, or you can get it from product owner, the product team. Yeah, so the load is nothing but number of users. So for how many hours we have to run the test? So generally load test will be run for 1 hour duration, 1 hour steady state. We call it as 1 hour steady state. Okay, load test will be run for 1 hour steady state. Okay, 1 hour steady state. So every project, I mean, it's not like only this company, that project, nothing like that. Every project, generally we run load test for 1 hour steady state. Okay, I will discuss what is steady state and all later, but generally at a very high level, just understand that we run load test for 1 hour. Okay, let's say you start a load test at 9 a.m., probably you run till 10 a.m., 10:15 like that. Okay, so 1 hour steady state. What is that we are going to verify? So we are going to verify the application performance, okay, in terms of speed. Like for example, when I say in terms of speed, um, how fast the application is loading, okay, like page loading time, or you can also call it as response times. Response times means when a request goes to server. Yesterday we have seen, right? We opened that Usen tool. So yesterday we have seen, I know, the script, right? In that you have a launch request, login request, right? Logout request, right? Something like that. So when a request goes to server, okay, from that point till you get the response back, how much time it is taking, okay, that is called response time. Okay, for example, this is launch request, right? Yesterday we have seen. So when this request goes to server, okay, obviously when you replay, what will happen? Each of these requests will go to server and it will be processed there and you'll get the response. So what is a server and all these things we'll discuss tomorrow. But generally what happens is this request will go to server and it will process it and you'll get the response back. So the whole amount of time, okay, to execute these steps, okay, that is called response time. Okay, so we are going to verify the response times. Now, how much time it should normally take? Okay, how much time it should normally take? Normally, SLA is 2 seconds as per the industry standard. That means, as per the industry standard, whenever a user clicks a link or clicks a button, for example, the next page should load within 2 seconds, or the page should load within 2 seconds. Okay, in some cases, depending on the project, okay, they can change the SLA. SLA means the service level agreement. Okay, basically it's an agreement between the client and the whole stakeholders. Okay, the client will say that, especially to development team, the client will say that, hey, you are going to develop my application, right? My application pages should load within 2 seconds. So that is my SLA, service level agreement. Okay, so sometimes it will be 2 seconds, sometimes it will be 3 seconds, sometimes it will be 5 seconds also, depending on architecture. But the industry standard is 2 seconds. Okay, SLA stands for service level agreement. Okay, so now we verify for performance in terms of speed, page loading time, response times. Okay, and also we validate any errors, if any errors. Okay, like so many things, like we verify for any server crashes or restarts. Now various things we verify here. Okay, so we'll discuss that in detail. So all in all, what is that we are going to do is, when you run a load test, okay, Basically, it's all about checking the speed of the application by applying some load. So, what is load? Number of users. Who is going to give this number to you? The client will give this number to us. Okay, or the application team will give it to us. We need not worry. Okay. Then load test will be run for 1 hour. What is that we are going to verify during the test or after the test? We are going to verify all these things. This is a very high level. You can verify, many more details as well. So this is the first major test. Okay, first major test that we have to perform. Okay, to be run. So that means if this test is a failure, let's say you run a load test. Let's say the test is failed. When a test is failed, basically you cannot run these type of tests. If this is successful, then only you can go ahead and run any of these. That valid point, right? So when the application itself is not working or successful for the first major type of performance test, that is a load testing. What is the purpose of running the remaining tests? No use, right? So that's the reason this load test should be successful. This is the first major test. If this is a failure, we will not run until we get a fix. We will not run other types of tests basically. We can run this again, but we don't prefer to run these tests. Okay, now you can ask me, sir, how can you say whether a load test is a pass or fail? Okay, how can you say um, a load test is a pass or fail? So failure criteria. So you will call a test or you will mention the load test as a fail if number of failed transactions number of failed transactions exceed 2%. Okay, that is what I follow. Most of the performance testers follow. Some guys they follow 3%. Okay, or very rarely people follow 5% also. But in all the projects wherever I worked, I always prefer 2%. That means when I run a load test for 1 hour, let's say some 10,000 transactions got executed. Out of these, if my failure transactions are more than 2%, that means the load test itself is a direct failure. Basically, when the errors are more, like you cannot get the accurate performance results. Okay, so what is 2% of 10,000? So 10% is 1,000. Okay, so 1% is 100. 2% means 200. If the failure transactions are more than 200, you can directly mark the load test as fail. However, some people will use 3 or 5% also, depending on your project. You can check with your team on what is that they are following. You can follow the same. Okay, so I mean, you can also mark the test as a partial success also, but we will discuss that later. So when to mark the test as partial success, when to mark it as a success, or when to mark it as a failure. Okay, we'll discuss that in detail in our upcoming sessions. So, uh, so I hope you understood like what is load testing all about. So when you are assigned to some project, the very important, okay, the first type major test that you have to execute is load testing. Okay, so hope you got clarity. Any doubts as of now? So you understood what is load test? Okay, so the very first test that we have to do, very important. Now, all these things we'll do practically also. Okay, don't worry. We will execute a load test practically as well. Second one. Second one is stress testing. So what do you mean by stress testing? Actually, if you see the name itself is directly saying that stress. And that means you are trying to apply the stress on the system. So stressing the application, okay, stressing the application with more number of users, with more number of users than the load test. Okay, this is called stress testing. That means, let's say in load test you run with 500 users. So stress testing you can run with, let's say, 600, 700, 800, 900, like that. Or you can keep on stressing the application until the application breaks. That is also a valid test. So some of the clients they say that, hey, can you tell me the breaking point or the system crashing point? Okay, with how many users the application is crashing? Okay, or how many users, there are two things, like you can increase the load little bit so that it is also called as stress. Okay, and then at some time, very rarely the client will ask you to run the test until it breaks also. Okay, so stress testing. So here, what is the load? Load, anything about load test user volume. Okay, anything about load test user volumes. For example, here we run with 500. Okay, in load test, sorry, in stress testing we can run with 600, 700, 900,000, like that. Okay, so at some point it can break also. For example, I'll tell you one example of a restaurant. Let's say there's a restaurant with some, let's say, 5 tables. Okay, and there is one helper who will take the orders from all the 5 tables and deliver the food to them or on the table. So now let's say, due to increase in demand, the owner of the restaurant decided to increase the number of number of tables from 5 to 7. Okay, the helper here is now able to manage 7 tables. Okay, that's fine. Okay, he is successfully able to manage all, taking the food orders from all the 7 tables and delivering them, and taking care of them. Suddenly, there is a huge demand again. The owner decided to increase the number of tables from 7 to 9. In this case, actually the helper, okay, was able to do the job, to handle all the customers across 9 tables, but the amount of time taken to deliver the food got delayed very much. So earlier the food used to get delivered in, let's say, 10 minutes. Now it is taking like 30 minutes because more number of tables are there. Okay, that's fine. Owner said, okay, that's fine. You deliver it slowly, but okay, you continue your work. Okay, then the helper said, okay, I'll deliver it late, no problem, because if I'm the only one, then I cannot handle, right? Okay, now again there is a huge demand. Now the owner decided to increase the number of tables from 9 to 11. Okay, so here what did the helper do? The helper said, no, no, I cannot do anything. That's it. It's too much. I'm resigning. I'm going away. So let's say the helper left. That means, what did you understand here? The max the helper could handle, the number of tables were only 9, and that too with a performance degradation. That means the amount of time taken to deliver the food on the table is delayed, right? Because of number of tables increased. So at 9 tables only the performance degraded, and then when it reached to 11 tables, it completely crashed. The helper couldn't do anything. Similarly, in terms of application, okay, if you keep on increasing the users, at some point of time you can see performance degradation. Okay, and then beyond that, the application can crash or restart. Okay, so that is all about stress testing. So, for how long you run, probably it's up to you. You can run for 1 hour also. Okay. And then what is that you are going to verify? You are going to verify all these things. Okay. Failure criteria is also same. Okay. And then along with the failure percentage, okay, you should also see some other metrics, like, because we are increasing the load, like the failure criteria can change a little bit, but overall it should be fine. Like stressing the application with more number of users than the load test. Load is nothing. Load means, like, how many users. Like in anything about load test volumes. Load test 1 hour steady state. What is that you are going to verify? All this. This is about stress testing. Any questions? Any questions with respect to stress testing? Stress testing and load testing. Very, very important, guys. Okay. So if you go to any interviews, right, they will ask you. Okay.
Krishik, I want to ask one thing. Like, if any application is defined for 500 users, and
Hmm.
after that, if we are applying more than 500, suppose if I have applied 550 user, so that
Hmm.
comes into the stress testing, right?
Yeah, I mean, anything about load test, you can say it as a, technically you can say it as a stress testing. See, the thing is, in IT, in some of the projects they change the naming conventions according to the requirement. So let's say more only 50 users more, they still say it as a load test. That's fine because it's their project, their wish. But technically, if you speak, anything beyond load test volume will be stress testing only because these these numbers, whatever they are giving for load test, right? That's the max. That's the max load probably in production. So how do they give this number to you in the load test? How do they give this number to you? So this number is the max or the peak load in production currently. So that means whatever the max number of users accessing the application in production right now, that only we are taking as input for the load test. That means that's the peak volume. So anything above peak volume, is obviously a stress. So technically it is a stress testing only. Okay. So
So
now
so load so load testing, like if application is defined for 500 user and user is applying load suppose I am applying load of 10 to 15 user, or 400 to 500 user with the permissible limit of user, so that comes into the load testing, and if I exceed more than 500, that comes into the stress testing.
yes, and also there is an approach like how the client is giving this number to us. Okay, which we will discuss day after tomorrow. It's a separate session. Like you have to discuss in detail because it's a very important interview question. So they'll ask you how the client will derive this number. What if the client doesn't have any data? How to get this number? So we have to discuss some scenarios. So we'll cover this in our day after tomorrow session. Very very important. Okay. So as of now, just try to understand the load testing concept and stress testing concept. Anything more than that, that means like who is giving that number, how they are deriving that number, and all we'll discuss in our day after tomorrow session. But your question was valid, and as I said, technically it's stress testing only. Anything beyond 500. But as I said, different projects have their own naming conventions. For example, if you are already in IT, if you see the core agile methodologies, no company will follow the core agile methodologies. They will follow their own agile methodologies. Like in a sense, when I say their own, okay, it can be Scrum only, but within Scrum only they take their own decisions. Their Jira board will be their own Jira board. They will change all the options they on according to their wish, according to their project requirement. So nowadays it's like customized terms and terminologies, customized agile boards, all those things. So but you are correct, technically anything beyond this is obviously a stress to that application because already we are testing the peak load. So beyond peak load anything is stress only. Okay, third one, again very very important. So you'll get so many interview questions also from this. In some projects, they call it as endurance testing. In some projects, they call it as soap testing. In some projects, they call it as duration testing. All the names are same. I mean, the meaning of all these names are same. Okay. Now, what is this endurance testing? So here, endurance testing means checking the stability of the application. So what do you mean by checking the stability of the application? So here, as part of endurance test, we run the load test for let's say generally we run for minimum 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, 1 day. Okay, I have seen some projects like they run for 2 days also, 2 days. Okay, up to 5 days also they can run. So on most in most of the projects I have observed is like 5 to 8 hours. Okay. Now, why we have to run this? Why we have to run the endurance test for 5 hours or 8 hours? To check the stability of the application. So when I say stability, it means that in the 5 hours of load test, okay, 5 hours of endurance test or soak test, how the application is performing in the first 1 hour, how the application is performing in the second 1 hour, or how the application is performing in the last 1 hour. We have to analyze because when you are running a test for longer duration, how it is responding, how stable is your application. So if the in the first 1 hour, let's say you are getting the response times like 1.5 seconds on an average, 1.4 seconds on an average. In the last 1 hour, okay, in the last 1 hour, let's say you are getting response times as 5.3 seconds, okay, or 4.8 seconds, something like this. That means there is some performance degradation. Okay, when you run for longer duration, this should not happen. Okay, the application should perform, okay, in a stable way, like how it performed initially, it should perform throughout the test. Okay, the performance should not degrade. That's what it means. So here we run for like 3 hours, 5 hours, 8 hours, 1 day, 2 days, depending on the project requirement. What do you verify? We verify all these things again. Okay, and then we also verify one of the important concept called memory leaks. Very, very important. Okay, where you get out of memory errors also. Okay, so we will discuss this out of memory errors, memory leaks concepts and all, as our course progresses, because it is a different concept we have to discuss in detail. Okay, so we will focus on this in the endurance test. So in interview they will ask you, okay, what is endurance test and so on. So they will ask you, in which type of test the memory leaks can mostly occur. So the answer is endurance test. That doesn't mean that the memory leaks cannot occur in other types of tests. Yes, there is a chance that it can occur everywhere, but the probability of getting a memory leak issue is very high in endurance test. Okay, so why? Again, to answer why, we have to discuss in detail, like like what is a JVM architecture, what is the heap memory, okay, what is garbage collection mechanism, which algorithm they might use. Okay, so what is the what is the garbage collection mechanism process. All these things we have to discuss, okay, if you want to understand memory leaks. Okay, so we will, anyways, we have some session, okay, after learning the scripting and all. So at that point of time I'll explain that memory leaks, garbage collection, out of memory errors, JVM architecture and all those things. Okay, so now one more important point, guys, I forgot to mention. The important point, one more important point here is, for with how many users you have to run this test. I didn't mention anywhere here. If you see till here, I didn't mention anywhere with how many users I have to run this test. Okay, so in some projects, okay, they run with 100% load. Okay, they run with 100% load. That is same users as load test. Got it? So whatever the number of users you have used as part of load test, the same load will be applied here also. In some other projects or in some projects, okay, they run with 75% of the load. They run with the 75% of the load. Okay, now if you ask me, sir, which one I have to choose, like with how many users I have to run this test. Okay, basically if you are already working on in any, like if your team is already following some approach, you can follow the same. That means either 100% or 75%, whatever it is, you can follow the same. But if you are the one who has to decide, if no one else has done so far, then I suggest you to go with this 100% only. Okay, so different people, some people say, hey, we have to test with 75% load, but trust me, I've seen many projects, they prefer only the 100% load. Okay, I've seen this also, but many projects use 100%. So if you get an opportunity, I suggest you to go with this particular load only. Because why should I reduce the load if I have to run for longer duration? Why should I reduce the load? Okay, so valid point, right? It's a debatable topic, but then still, I know I why should I reduce the load? Why can't I run with the same load as a load test? So no problem. Go ahead and run, same users as load test. Nobody's going to ask you. As long as if client is okay, that's fine. If client says no, reduce the load, we'll see. Then according to the requirement, you have to do. So this is all about endurance testing. Any questions?
In last year I have written, like in some projects they run with 100% load, same user as load. Same users means like
Same users
what
means
it
the
means.
number of count here, 500. I mean to say,
Okay.
whatever the load that you applied in the load test, right? So okay. Hope you understood now. Okay. Now, what is the next one? Okay, scalability testing. So this is again very unique type of testing. Okay. So this type of testing will be done considering the future growth. Okay. Um, this type of testing will be done considering future growth of the application. Okay, let's say client client is saying like this, hey, in the next 6 months my application or my business will grow by 50%. Okay, example, client will say that next 6 months my business will grow by 50%. Then what does that mean? It means it means now only, okay, now itself, uh, okay, now itself, you have to test, with 150% load. Why 150? Because 100% is load test. The client is saying the business will grow by 50%. That means now itself you have to go for 150% load. That means if load test is done with 500 users, then uh, now itself, okay, you have to test with 750 users as well. That means 50% means 250, right? 50% of 500 is 250. So if load test is done with 500 users, now itself, you have to test with 750 users. Okay, I'll tell you one example. We all know, right? We all know the pandemic. Okay, on that, I mean, recently we have seen the pandemic in 2020, right? So I was supporting for one of the US bank. Okay, I think in the month of June, I guess June 2020, July 2020, somewhere around those times. So one day, client called us and said, "Hey, we could see that the number of users accessing the online application increased a lot due to pandemic. People are not directly going to bank, and rather they are preferring to use online services." Now the client said that considering the pandemic to be there for a longer duration, we are assuming that the online users might increase, okay, to 400% in next 2 months. Okay, the what client said is, considering the pandemic to be there for longer duration, the users accessing the bank application might increase to 400%. That's what they say. Now there are so many applications we will be testing, not one application. So it was a very, very high priority task for us. So we have to tell them that, hey, what client is saying that in next 2 months the users might increase up to, or users might go up to 400%. So what we have to do at that point of time, we have to test the applications whether they are able to support 400% load or not. That is what we have to test. So what we have to do, for example, okay, see here, for example, if load test, okay, or you can say 100% load test. Generally when I say load test, it is 100% load test. Why? Because that's a peak load, right? So 100% load test. If 100% load test is done with 500 users, okay, then according to the client requirement, can anyone tell what should I do next? What is my immediate step? Anyone? No one. Nothing wrong in answering, right? Just tell your input. Okay. We already tested with 100% load. We already tested with 100% load. It's already done. Load testing already done. Now, because it's an ad hoc requirement, pandemic was ad hoc. Suddenly it came unexpected. The client is saying that users might go up to 400% in next 2 months. So let us know whether the applications are supporting 400% or not. That's what client told us. Then Okay, this test is already done, it's successful. Now what next? You understood my question, right? What next? As a performance tester, what next? Nothing wrong. Okay, you can answer. Think.
Yeah, we can
So,
do with 2000 users.
okay. Now, okay. Uh, okay. You are saying that because my client said, okay, users will go up to 400% in next 2 months. 100% is 500. Okay, then 400% is 500 into 4, obviously 2000 users. That's true. But we should not execute with 2000 users directly. Okay, rather we have to go step by step. So next you have to execute 200% load test. Okay, that means with 1000 users. Then 300% load test you can go ahead and try with 1500 users. Then finally 400% load test, okay, with 2000 users. Why we have to follow this approach? Because if you directly test with 2000 users, okay, and if this is a failure, if this is a failure, now can you tell client? Now client will immediately ask, okay, you will say that, hey, 400% is a failure, it's not working, the application crashed. Now client will immediately ask, what about 100%, 200%, or 300%? Or client will ask, then what is the max it is supporting? Then how can you tell? That's the reason. Or at the same time, if it is failing at 400%, you cannot guarantee that it will work with 200% or 300%. You don't know. That's the reason you have to go step by step gradually. Okay, not only in this ad hoc requirement, everywhere, whenever you're attending any client meetings or any product owner meetings or anyone, if they ask you to increase the load rapidly, do not do that. Tell them that it is not the best practice. Rather, go step by step. Okay, increase the load. Okay, with some good number, but not drastically, and then go ahead and run the test. Now, for our applications, okay, for some of the applications, 400% test was successful, but some of the applications, the applications were crashed at 300% only. At 300% only, some of the applications crashed. Some of the applications still supported 400%. Now, what was the solution? What did the client do at that point of time? All the applications, because they don't have time, it has to be done immediately. Now, why it is failing at 300%? No, they cannot ask developer to look into it immediately, because performance issues cannot be fixed right away. Overnight, they cannot fix it. Okay, they need some time. Every developers need some time to fix performance issues. Okay, so what is the important thing that they have to do then immediately? Immediately, client said that, okay, increase the hardware configuration for all the applications which are failing at 300%. What does that mean? Now, let's say RAM is 8 GB, increase to 16 GB, like that. So when they increase the hardware configuration as well, then it was working fine. So which we call it as scale up. Okay, scale up. We'll discuss that. Okay, so we'll discuss that scale up, scale out. We'll discuss in tomorrow's session also. So this is the approach what they follow: scalability testing. Okay, normally what they do in most of the projects. Okay, even if client doesn't say anything, if client says I want scalability testing, so they will run. So they will run with 200% load minimum 200% load they will run. Okay, now for how long it will run? Same 1 hour they will run. Okay, 1 hour load, 1 hour only, 1 hour load test only. Only thing is the users are changing. Okay, 1 hour test. Only thing is the users are changing. And what are we going to verify? These are the basic things that we are going to verify, and many other things as well, which we'll discuss in detail. When we cover APM sessions, right? AppDynamics on Dynatrace, I'll tell you clearly. Okay, so this is about scalability testing. Okay, now if you see here, performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability. So if client says that, hey, I'm not aware of performance testing at all, you only tell me or you only suggest me which are the best types of testing that I have to that we have to do for our project. Then you should say that because performance testing is measured in terms of speed, stability, and scalability, always go with this load, endurance, and stress scalability. This one, and this one by default. I mean, you can either go with stress or scalability. Any one is fine because more or less pretty much same. So you can go with either stress or scalability. No need of testing both. Okay. So like that, one, two, three. You have to suggest these three for sure. Then what is volume testing? So again, very this is also not that important, but again we test it very rarely. If you ask me, sir, when did you recently done the volume testing? I think since last 1 year we haven't done it. Okay, there's no requirement basically. Okay, but I'll tell you what is that. We don't execute frequently. Volume testing is same as load test. See, I copied all the points. It will be same as load test. Okay, so I can write same as load test, except that huge data will be inserted into database intentionally. Okay, and then check for the check for the DB performance, mostly DB or application performance, DB and application, overall application, DB and overall application performance. So what do you mean by this? What do you mean by that huge data will be inserted into database? Okay, why we have to insert data, by the way? So why it is actually, it is everything is same as load test, but only change is in database you will have more data here. Okay, in database you will have more amount of data. Okay, for example, for load test, okay, for load test, let's say in your database you had 1 lakh records. Okay, while testing low, while when we tested the when we did the load test in our, let's say, in the database, let's say there are 1 lakh records. Okay, 1 lakh records are there. Records means, right, some you do database, it will be in the form of rows and tables, right? So let's say there are 1 lakh records. Now when we are running the volume testing, we have to intentionally, or we have to insert huge data into database, right? So that means, let's say you have to insert, or you have to test with some 4 lakh records of data. You have to test with 4 lakh records of data. Now who will insert the remaining 3 lakh data into database? Okay, take help of DBA, database administrator, or dev team. Basically DBA will do it, but then again, if DBA is not there, you can check with dev. Okay, so they have to insert huge amount of data into database, and then when the database is loaded, with huge amount of data, then how the application is performing, how the database is performing, how the SQL queries are performing, are there any long running queries? Okay, but, are you observing any slowness in terms of query execution? So all these things you have to find out, guys. So basically it is more focused on the database performance. Any questions? Okay, so why we have to test it basically? So let's say I'm starting a college, my own college. The first year of college, I have 1,000 students. I have to save some data of students, somewhere, right? Let's say I created a database. I'm storing all the information of students, like their first name, last name, student ID. Okay, what is the course they are studying? Okay, all these things. And at the same time, I'll also store the information of the faculty, the teaching staff, and the administration team, and all those things in the database. Okay, that's fine. But let's say after 5 years or 10 years, the number of students will increase. Obviously, they can go up to 30,000, 40,000 students, because so many students will join every year. Now that means there are so many records that will be inserted into database. The students' information will be stored into database. So huge increase in the data, right? So in that point of time, how the application is responding, how the SQL queries are performing. So those things you have to verify. Any questions? Very rarely we do it. We don't do it frequently, guys. Okay, we generally don't do it frequently. Yes, Abhishek. Here it was 200%. Okay. Any questions? Okay. So the next one is failover testing, which we will discuss tomorrow. Because for failover testing, we have to understand the terms called server. What is a server? What is database server? What is application server? What is web server? What is the architecture, entire architecture? So if you understand those concepts, then understanding failover testing is easy. Nowadays this failover testing is popular. Okay, now clients are more interested in implementing this failover testing as well. So how to do this? Okay, what is your approach in testing? So we will discuss this tomorrow in detail through diagrams. Okay, very very important nowadays. In interviews also they'll ask you what is failover testing. Have you done failover testing? Yes. How? What was your approach, or what did you verify? Very very important question for interview. Okay, so we'll cover tomorrow because it needs more concepts to be learned. Then what is spike testing? It's pretty much straightforward only. Spike testing means, okay, um, so you have to apply a sudden increase in load, or sudden extreme increase or decrease in load. Okay, which we call it as spike testing. Let's say you have started a load test. Okay, suddenly let's say you started applying load. No, you suddenly increased 500 users. Suddenly you increased 500 users. Then after 1 minute, suddenly you decreased 1,000 users. Okay, then how the application is responding, the sudden fluctuations in terms of load applied on the system, how it is responding. See, when you see the e-commerce websites, basically they announce big sale, right? So they'll say that, hey, 12 p.m. exactly, there is a big sale for, let's say, 1 plus 10 phone. Okay, 1 plus 10 something, some phone, there's a big sale at 12 p.m. Now, at exactly at 12 p.m., there will be a sudden increase in the number of users. See what will happen? Let's take some e-commerce website. Okay, normally let's say till 11:50. Okay, 11:50 a.m. Let's say 500 users are active. Okay, okay, then 11:55 also. Let's say 550 or something like that. Suddenly at 12 p.m., let's say the users increase to 10,000. No, you see there's a huge spike in the graph, right? When we analyze, it will go like this. So it will like, let's say 500 users are running like this. Suddenly the graph will go like this. Okay, ideally it should not go like that. There should not be sudden spikes like that. Then when there is a sudden spike like that in the graph, it will have a direct impact on the performance of the server. Sometimes the server will crash. Okay, now, okay, let's say I want to run for 1 minute. Suddenly I will decrease the load like this, which is not the right thing, right way of testing. You should not decrease the user suddenly like that. There should be a step-by-step approach like this, which we call ramp up, and then there's a step-by-step, uh, step down approach like this, which we call ramp down. Okay, so we will discuss that later. But anyways, so this is about spike testing, guys. Okay, now again, if you ask me when did you last test it, almost 1 year, approximately 1 year back, I guess. So it depends on project to project, team to team. Okay, so it's up to you. You can also follow the same. Okay, so tomorrow we are going to discuss about failover testing. Okay, and also what is web server, app server, database server, what is a load balancer. Okay, what is scale up, scale out. Okay, what is a protocol. All these things we'll cover tomorrow. Any questions for today? See guys, there are so many interview questions, okay, from today's concept. We cannot predict also, okay, like what they'll ask. But we have our own set of questions. Okay, I prepared the questionnaire document also, interview questionnaire document. Okay, mostly the questions will come from this document, especially from the LoadRunner perspective. Okay, see here, I mean, I've clearly mentioned. Sometimes they'll ask you what is a server. Okay, I clearly mentioned what's the difference between load test and stress testing. So I mentioned all the question and answers, the question, answer. Sometimes they'll ask a follow-up question. So for possible follow-up question, answer. Okay, like I've mentioned clearly so many question and answers how to handle, including some practical questions also I mentioned. Okay, so this document will definitely help you in clearing the interview. So whenever you attend interviews, just browse this document one day before. Okay, currently there are 60 questions here. I'm trying to increase the questions. Okay, in next 15 days for sure. Okay, so it will take little bit time, but definitely I will add. Okay, before I complete this batch, I will give you the complete set of questions. That means if you go to interview, you read this and go 99%, you will get all these questions only from LoadRunner. I'm not talking about JMeter. So this document contains all the questions and answers of LoadRunner. However, I will add all the questions which are common to performance testing. Okay, so I mean, there are so many concepts outside of LoadRunner, right? So all those questions must be added here. Okay, if someone is interested, I can later on I can add JMeter also and send it to you for you guys. Okay, I think there is separate document for JMeter also with me. I have to find out somewhere it is there. Okay, so any questions?
Yes, Kaushik. Uh, is provided sessions recordings?
Yes, yes. On
Hello.
day on daily basis, the sessions will be the recorded sessions will be sent. So sent in sense, actually, what they do is they will take your email IDs, okay,
Okay.
and they will create a playlist in YouTube. So what you have to do is you have to log into your YouTube. Sorry, you have to log into YouTube with your email ID, Gmail ID basically, and then
Okay.
if you go to library, the playlist will be there forever. Okay, so like it will be there forever. You can log in whenever you want, and you can watch the videos.
Uh, we can watch it anytime. Is time is
So,
anytime.
sorry, your voice was breaking.
Uh, Actually, how many days it is provided for this one?
No, this session they will provide in next 2 3 hours, 1 2 hours or 2 3 hours max. So daily they will give you, after the session, they will share the playlist link update. They'll update the playlist link, for every like after daily after 2 3 hours. Okay, like after the session, after 2 3 hours, they will give the playlist link.
I guess he's asking the validity, like how long this
No, that's what
playlist
I'm
will be
telling.
with
How
us.
long
Forever.
it will be
No,
available?
forever, forever. That's what I told. Forever.
Alright.
Earlier I told, right? It will be there for you.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
whenever you want, you can access. Okay, so hope you understood today's session. So from tomorrow, again, every day is important because every day we discuss the interview questions and all these things. So tomorrow's session is
Kru-
also very, very important. Yeah, tell me.
Krushik, this we are doing using any tool, like how we can achieve this if I want to
Load, load
practice.
runner only. Load runner.
So load runner, I mean, this access will be provided from your side because it's a paid version. So how we can do
Yeah, so
hands-on on this?
so they will give you a trial version. So which will be there
Mhm.
for limited number of users. Okay, it will be there with you forever, but limited users. Okay, so they will we
So
will they
so
will
trial
yeah,
version
sure.
will work exactly like as a paid version.
Yes, yes, exactly. No change in it. I mean, when I say trial version, they have given the full version as a trial version, but for limited users. Okay, there are no. I mean, in some tools, you see some of the features disabled, right? It's not like that. All the features are enabled here.
Okay.
Okay, so let's let me stop recording here. Any other questions?